Hello, sweeties. Today we will have another listening lesson. Yes, completely in English. And I want to ask you, do you think it's possible to learn English from home? From a Spanish-speaking country, for example? Or from a country where practically nobody speaks English? That's something actually people don't believe when I tell them. I didn't grow up speaking English. I didn't go to a bilingual school. I didn't have English speaking friends. In my house, we weren't really encouraged to study or speak English. I have always lived in a Spanish-speaking country. Of course, I have traveled. I only started studying English more formally when I was a teenager, and I only started speaking it when I was about 18 years old. I have traveled, and that has helped me a lot, but I've never even been in the USA or London, for example, England. So today I'm going to tell you some myths, some things that people put in their heads and that blocks them from speaking English. I'm going to tell you exactly what I did and what you can do to learn English from the comfort of your house or from your country. The myths. This is something I read all the time in my comments when I react to someone's English. Oh, but they live in Miami. Oh, but they have lived in the USA for many years. She studied in a bilingual school. My dear, I have a lot of students who have studied in bilingual schools in my city and they are not fluent in English, let's say. I have also met many Latino people and students who have lived in the US for 5, 10, or even 20 years and still don't feel comfortable using English. So, first of all, don't believe that because you will move to a country or you will be able to live there, you will immediately learn the language and speak it also fluently. Immersion definitely helps, but it doesn't need to be abroad. The difference isn't in the location. The difference is what you do every day with your own resources in the place that you are. Let's put it this way. It's how much English lives in your life, not how much you live in English or in an English-speaking country. And let me tell you exactly what I did, because these were not strategies for me. I was just a teenager, a young girl trying to live her life, basically. Meeting people, traveling to little towns in my city, actually. But my first real obsession was music. I was obsessed with rock and especially with rap, especially a very famous rapper, the world's best, I would say. This beautiful man here who speaks incredible English, really clear English, even though you don't believe me. Of course, he speaks very fast, but I think he was my first teacher when I was learning English. Back then, I didn't have YouTube, so you had to download the song, and then I downloaded the lyrics in English and the lyrics in Spanish. And I remember I spent hours listening to the songs, comparing both lyrics, trying to figure out what was this, because most of the words, most of the expressions, I didn't get taught at school. My teachers were certainly not teaching me this, especially because there were some problematic lyrics there, but also the grammar structures I was listening to, the expressions, the everyday expressions, we were not being taught at school. Without actually me realizing, I was learning English patterns and English chunks. As I've told you before, English is a language of phrases, or as we call them in English, chunks. Chunks of words. For example, a cup of tea. That's an expression and you usually always say it like that. Or why do we say look at something? Look at, for example. Why do we always use this at next to look? Okay? It's just because English is made this way. It's made of phrases. It's made of words that are always connected. And once you realize this, you can speak anything you want, just repeating everything all the time. The second thing I did was, of course, watching series in English. Back then, I remember we couldn't change the subtitles, so I watched my favorite TV shows like Friends, 2.5 Men, I remember, with subtitles completely in Spanish. But at one point, I was listening to that so much that, for example, I was turned over doing other things and I could listen and laugh at the jokes. That's when I realized I was actually getting the language. I was actually understanding not only the language, but even the jokes. I repeated some of the phrases out loud. Why? I don't know, but it just caught my attention, it caught my eye, and I just found myself repeating like stuff I heard. I have actually caught my boyfriend doing this when he's watching like Game of Thrones. He's like just sitting there and he's like, yeah, why would you do that? And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I don't know. What he's doing is actually the best exercise that you can do. And I'll talk about it in a moment. The third thing I did, and this was when I was a little bit older, I was maybe 15 to 18 years old. I used to go out with my friends and we would somehow encounter foreigners, not especially Americans or people from Britain, but we would find people from a lot of different countries and the common language was English. I remember I used to speak in a very broken English, much more broken than the one I use right now. But we would still laugh, communicate, chat, talk about the cultural differences and everything. This is when I started traveling a lot to small towns in my city. Every country, I think, has these small towns where there are a lot of foreigners, maybe some hippies, and then it's like a different environment. After that, when I was 18, finally, I decided to do a travel exchange, a student exchange, and I went to France. I didn't want to go to America because I knew I didn't have any troubles with the language, but I didn't know how much I could actually learn. Because when I arrived in France, all of the other exchange student kids were from either the USA or Canada. So we immediately became best friends and I started realizing so much I didn't know from English. I even got laughed at for my accent a couple of times, but most of the times they complimented my English. They said my English was very good. And the few times they laughed at me, because we were in confidence, we were friends, I really understood a lot of things and a lot of the way English sounds, a lot of the way that English works. Now let's get to the good part. What does this mean for you? And what can you do exactly to immerse yourself in the language without even leaving home? The step one is that you need to change your environment. I know today we can change the subtitles and the audio on Netflix, on the TV, etc. So put all of your devices in English. Put your TV with audio in English. If you're starting, you can leave the subtitles in Spanish sometimes, then sometimes switch it to English. Put your phone in English. Try to use all of the devices you have in English. Then, I'm sorry, my friend, but forget about watching soap operas, telenovelas in Spanish. This is not going to help. There are also soap operas and telenovelas in English if you want to watch them. You can also watch cooking shows, car shows. There is an amazing amount of content in English and you don't need to restrict yourself to comedy series or movies if you're not into that. Just make these small changes. Don't even try to see them as studying. Try to see it as a hobby. Try to find things you are actually interested in. Like when I was obsessed with Eminem. Step 2, speak out loud every day. As I always tell you, my dear, speak en voz alta, speak out loud, for God's sake, do it. Speak when you are by yourself, for example, narrating things you are doing. Okay, I'm gonna drink some water, then you drink water. I'm gonna go to the kitchen, maybe. Little things like this. Then do the exercise that I was mentioning. Whenever you're scrolling, doom scrolling, not doing anything important, just start repeating any phrases you listen to in English. Phrases that you think are interesting or that maybe sound familiar to you, that you know, repeat them in English. Do the same when you are watching TV in any occasion you have, really. As I always tell you, your mouth needs practice. We don't have the same movements. We don't have the same sounds in Spanish or in other languages. You need to get your mouth used to doing these sounds. And number 3, and I think the most important, work on your courage. Work on yourself and your ability to go out there, put yourself out there and talk to strangers. Find people through apps, find people through speaking groups. I myself have some speaking groups you can join. There is an absolutely amazing, completely free platform where you can chat to strangers and it's supervised. You are not going to run into like weird people, let's call them. You're going to run into people who actually want to practice English. It's called Episoden. I'll leave you the link below. They are not sponsoring me. But if you want, you can sponsor me, by the way. even by text. No, if you like video games, use your video games in English. Try chatting with people in English too. And as I mentioned, if you can travel, of course that's going to help you, but you don't have to travel far. Try to travel to these little cozy towns I mentioned, or try to frequent these clubs and nightclubs that sometimes hold international language nights. That really helps. And finally, stop waiting to be ready. I remember one of my biggest mistakes, I actually only started using my English when I finished my English school. I started in a private English school, like we would do classes from Monday to Friday only in English when I was a teenager. But we used it like for a little while in the class, and then I never practiced until I was much older. So I had a certificate that said I was proficient in English when I really wasn't. Most of my classmates, they felt exactly the same, if not worse, because I actually had a lot of practice with music, series, etc. But they were really unconfident about their English, even though they had finished 3 or 4 years of studying at this private English school. So don't make this mistake. Look, sweetie, I'm not going to tell you that it's easy, but it is very possible. Of course, there were moments where I didn't want to study anymore, where I felt really embarrassed too, when I felt like, oh, I'm never gonna speak like a gringa. But I also realized I don't need to sound like a gringa, like an American, or whatever you want to call it, like a native speaker. No. I am sure you are watching this video and some of you are probably criticizing my accent, as I get it sometimes in my comments, but I really don't care about that, because people who are criticizing are not taking action, and you don't have to worry about people who are criticizing you or your accent. This only shows your roots, where you come from, your cultural background. It shows your story. So, sweetie, the important thing is that you keep going and that you follow these steps, or you follow a structure, okay? You need to have a system to achieve fluency. If you want a really structured path to continue your English journey, I present to you PASAPORTE, or PASAPORTE. This is a course that helps you go from wherever you are right now, even if you are a beginner, to speaking English confidently. And we do this with the materials we love, with English from TV shows, from series, from movies, and music. There are 3 levels you can check out, and you can do them at your own pace with my private guidance and my private feedback. The link is in the description, so go check it out or share it with someone who really needs it. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next one.